Welcome back. Welcome back. So let's try this again. My phone had roughly shut off, which is a reminder that I need to get me a new phone. But I am so stubborn. I've had this phone for 4 years, and believe it or not, it is an LG Aristo phone, okay? And I just refuse to get a new one. That's just me. I think I'll get a new one when this phone is not operable at all, right? The fact that it's still working for me, even though it shuts off by itself, like it just did when I attempted to go live, I'm still like using it. I'm still depending on it. Like I feel like it's reliable, right? I can still use it. But anyway, let's jump into this video. So I feel really excited to talk about this topic on the challenges versus the benefits of sexual abstinence, considering my own personal experience with abstinence. Now I want to pose a question to you guys and gals who are watching. What is the longest period that you have gone without sexual activity? Now this is obviously given the fact that you have experienced sex, at least at some point in your life, initially, right? Which for most of us, it was back in our late teens, right? And then at some point after that, you stop having sex. What is the longest time, the longest period that you have gone without intercourse? I'm not going to say sexual activity, but intercourse, right, with a person. So feel free to drop your responses below if you want to share, of course, if you feel comfortable sharing. I'm going to talk about my own personal experience relating to the challenges that I've faced, but the benefits. I feel like the benefits outweigh the challenges, though. And even if it was the reverse, where the challenges were far greater than what I was gaining from this whole sexual sabbatical, I still think I would be very committed to it. Because for me, sex is very sacred. Sex is spiritual. I take it very seriously. And yeah. So I think that kind of obviously factors into the reason why I have gone on this sabbatical, right? And I'm very calculated about who I have, sexual intercourse with, let alone have, like, psychological sexual intercourse. Because when you think about it, it really starts with the mind. So whoever you kind of have discourse with on an interpersonal level, it's like you're having sex. It's like a sexual energy exchange, as you can call it, right? Even if it's just verbal communication, that's just how I see it. So I'm very even careful and protected and guarded when it comes to who I'm engaging with on that level. Right now, oh my gosh, yo, right now my menstrual cycle is loading, and I think it should have come on like 2 days ago, but I think it's like late, and it's not definitely late because I'm pregnant. Though I wouldn't be disappointed if I was pregnant. But I have gone without having sex in January. This coming January will be 2 years, guys. 2 years. And that's just not just sex, right? That's also me dating. And I really feel good about it. Now, contrary to what some of y'all may think, because I come on here and I make my videos talking about different sexual related activities and alternative sexual lifestyle like cuckolding and BDSM and bondage and spanking, and yes, I'm very titillated by those different discussion topic ideas. Just because I am doesn't mean that I'm out here just getting it in. Not to say that it's a bad thing when it comes to getting it in, but I do think there's a correlation, I think, between the socialization of men in our society versus women and our degree of sexual expression and sexual freedom, right? Men are definitely socialized in ways that encourage them, promote them, reinforce their sexual freedom. Women, we are slut-shamed, unfortunately, right? We are told that you should keep your legs closed. This is from a very early age, right? we are looked down upon. We're demeaned, right? And talking about our sexual freedom and our sexual expression and our sexual appetite and our, just anything related to sex for women, it's like we're cast down upon. But men are given their props, they're given daps, right? It's like they're given cool points, based on how many number of sexual partners that they've accumulated. For women, it's the opposite. So I think that plays a major role and definitely factors into a woman's ability to be able to go without sex and be proud of it. Whereas for men, when men go without sex, it's like it's almost like an embarrassment, right? You ask a man, how long has it been for you? And the longest that he's been, like the longer it's been for a man, it's almost like the more shameful he feels, right? The more disappointing it is. But it's the reverse for women. So you see how that works? The longer that a woman goes without having sex with a man or sexual intercourse, it's like a badge of honor, And for me, I do feel proud of myself. Not for that reason in particular, but just for my own like spiritual sanctity and cleanliness, and I feel like my own purity, And speaking of purity, just looking at that, like I like to look at these different topics from a more psychoanalytical level. But when you look at just the construct of purity and how we associate that with abstinence, especially for a woman, not necessarily for men, but for a woman, think about that. Right? I feel like our society has so many double standards that it really doesn't make any sense. Because for a man, if a man is gaining cool points for having sex with a woman, right? And based on the number of sexual partners he's had, as it increases, right, he is, looked upon in a good way. But the reverse is true for a woman. Then wouldn't that mean that when a woman has sex with a man, the man himself is what defiles the woman? Is it sex or is it the man? Think about it, right? Because the opposite is true. If a man has sex with a woman, like his value increases. But a woman's value decreases when someone please explain that. Because I only can attribute it to the level and the degree of value within that person that the individual is lying down with. How can a woman's value decrease when she has sex with a man, but a man's value increases when he has sex with a woman? Answer me that. So that the fewer partners that a woman has, the more pure she is. Answer me that. But anyway, switching gears a little bit. So I want to address this post that I made first and foremost. This was like several months ago, where someone asked me in relation to my videos that I make on various, alternative sexual activities and lifestyles. This person says, are you a nympho? Is it like being a nympho? And I'm like, do I give nympho vibes? Do I give nympho? I don't think I really give nympho vibes. For me, I think a person can be enthused about a topic and speak about it very openly and cleverly without it being an obsession or a person being labeled a nympho. Right? Like, I try to stay away from those stigmatizing labels. And anytime when I'm in a discourse with a person, that's how I can gauge whether I should continue this discourse with this person, right? If this person is mature enough to handle my perspective, or even appreciative and responsible enough to handle my perspective, just based on the terminology, the narrative, the language that this person uses. And oftentimes, those are words that come up in the conversation. We're just talking about conversation about sexual related things, right? When a person says, oh, nympho, making the assumption that just because I speak so openly about sex, that I'm a nympho. And that's quite the contrary. I know exactly what a nympho is. And a nympho is essentially a person who is, it's like a sex addict. They need sex, right? These people need sex to the extent that they are willing to compromise, very important relationships that they have with people, even when it comes to on the job, right? These people probably are masturbating at their desk. That's a nympho. Like, no. I feel like for me, yes, sex is sacred, and I'm very disciplined and very controlled when it comes to sex, even though I embrace sexual freedom. So I feel like the two can exist simultaneously, right? Like a person can be high in sexual freedom and even sexual expression, right? But at the same time, be very calculated in terms of who they actually lie down and have sex with, they can maintain very few sexual partners, even with this openness of sexual expression and sexual freedom. So, do I have an audience? I hope not, outside. But yeah, that's a word that comes up, that term, nympho. This person commented and replied to one of my videos, or I think this person maybe messaged me, or I don't know, messaged me directly or commented on my videos and asked me this, and I actually was offended. I didn't even reply. I feel like, first of all, I'm not obligated to reply to anyone's message. I just don't. I usually don't have private discourse in my inbox with people back and forth. That's not something I do. I feel like if you guys want to interact with me, this is the time. When I am live, this is the time to interact with me. Okay? Outside of that, I don't do private conversations because my time is very valuable. And then another one is when people use the word freak. I feel like that's very offensive. And it usually comes up when I express my interest in certain alternative sexual activities, like bondage, for example, or BDSM spankings, discipline spankings, or even just saying that I'm a submissive woman. Their mind automatically goes to, oh, this person is a freak, just based on the stigma that has come along with BDSM, right? And I feel like it's a misnomer. Oftentimes people misunderstand and misconstrue the concept of BDSM. They don't even know. They don't quite know exactly what it is, right? This is the reason why I only deal with masters, and this is the reason why I only deal with very mature, dominant, alpha male men, because that would never come up in their vernacular, right? People who hypersexualize BDSM, or even submission for that matter, aren't people that I would be interacting with to begin with, right? Because for me, it's not about sex. I can't emphasize that enough. I've made videos, I've discussed this. It's not about sex, right? Even on my dating profiles, right? And when they have, you can indicate what your interests are, right? And hashtag, and I'll say, BDSM or bondage or spankings. It's like people will go there, they extrapolate that, and then automatically make this, overgeneralization or this assumption based on what they've been taught, right? Or what they've been exposed to relating to those key words. But it's just like, no, I feel like in order to really see a person, right, understand a person, and meet them where they are, it's better to not assume, but it's better to just ask, right? And express a degree of curiosity. That way it's not coming off as like you're judging them, because if anything, if I'm being judged or misperceived, I immediately shut down. The conversation shuts down. I'm no longer interested, especially when it comes to on a dating interpersonal level. I am no longer interested in you because you're not there yet. You're not mature enough to handle this conversation. You're not ready, right? And so this is the reason why I think I find dating very difficult. This is a challenge, I think, when it comes to my specific sexual interests and my type, is because, yes, it makes the dating pool very narrow, very limited for me in terms of what I'm interested in, you know, and who is most compatible with me. Because if anything, obviously I think I'm just like a regular person, a normal person. Like what's most important for a lot of people is that we're understood, not misunderstood, but we're seen in the light that reflects who we truly are. And oftentimes that's not the case. And so I had to kind of start off with that because I thought that was like hilarious and also somewhat offensive too. It's like hilarious because it's definitely, I know it's not me. Like I'm not a nympho. I'm not a freak. I don't look at myself as a freak, though I get it. Some things that I identify with may seem very like odd and unusual and abnormal, but it's just not for you. Just leave it at that. It's not for you. It's not that I'm a freak. I feel like freak is also one of those terms that relate to people who, you know, you're out there, like you're loose, and I'm definitely nowhere near that. In fact, it's like the quite opposite. And I think that's the hilarious part about it. And so thinking about this post that I made recently where I asked people about the longest that they've gone without having sex and thinking about my own abstinence, it's like, wow. It's like, wow, yo. I mean, I feel good, but at the same time, I think that it's challenges, obviously, that comes along with it. So the benefit I've already expressed is that, yeah, it gives me a sense of, like, purity and cleanliness and knowing that, you know, I'm honoring my spiritual beliefs and practices, right? Because I don't think that sex is just something to be just tossed around indiscriminately and just lying down or even having verbal exchanges with someone. That's not something that I take very lightly, you know. So it makes me feel proud in knowing that I'm honoring that sanctity of my flower, you know, and my sexual energy that I hold very sacred and I keep very near and dear to my heart. But at the same time, there are challenges because I'm only human, right? And so being human, like, it's only human nature to have a sexual desire. That desire doesn't go away with age. In fact, I think it increases sometimes, right? Like we, as women, we have our sexual peaks, and there are many different peaks throughout our lifespan where we have these like incredible urges to just be fucked and be fucked good, you know. And practicing abstinence or celibacy is just like, you know, it's an internal struggle because you're battling with this natural proclivity, this biological inclination to be stimulated. But meanwhile, psychologically and spiritually, you're upholding this level of abstinence and restraint. And it's just like, it's definitely a struggle. And I think that is most difficult during certain times of the month, right? Clearly, from a biological perspective, you know, I definitely will have to admit, and I think this is just, it's not a secret, I think this is just basic, regular information that is accessible to anyone, you know, you have access to the internet, but a lot of women, and it's just speaking from personal experience, a lot of women, and I can speak for myself, that we obviously are the horniest, right? We have this sexual appetite that kind of peaks during certain times of the month. Definitely around the time when we are the most fertile, right? Which is usually 14 days after the start of our menstrual cycle. So for example, I can sense that my menstrual cycle is coming. Like I know my body starts to go through these changes. Like I start to experience like a little bit of cramping. Sometimes I have like a pain like in my lower back area. I can feel like my level of energy somewhat changing, not drastically. It's not like this big, drastic, subtle change, but or drastic change. It's like small, like subtle changes. Like it's noticeable, just noticeable difference where it's just like, okay, especially if you're in tune as a woman, that I am. I'm very in tune with my body. I can sense when things are changing on the inside. And so, let's say, what's today? Because I haven't been at work for the past week, so I'm not keeping track of the days here, or the date. But let's just say, for simplicity's sake, that my period comes on the 10th, right? That's the first day. So count 14 days after that will be the 24th. That's during that period, I would say within, let's say, a 4-day window of that. So let's say from the 24th to like 28th, that's when, I will be most fertile. And during that period, I'm ovulating, right? And during ovulation, there's like a lot of lubrication there purposefully, so it makes sense that a woman, her sexual urges increase during that period when she's most fertile, which is conducive of procreation, right? It serves a biological function. And so during those times, like, I know this, and I wouldn't even say it's just during the time when I'm ovulating, which is like 14 days post the first day of my menstrual cycle. But I would say it's even around my menstrual cycle, which seems very odd. But like, even now, as I can feel, even now as I'm doing this video, that things are working down there, right? Things are moving around. Something is happening down there. Basically, the lining of my uterus is getting ready to shed. It's like, I feel horny. Like, I feel like I want to have sex, right? And one can look at it like, okay, I'm denying myself of this opportunity. It's like, why? Why would you do that, right? Why not, like, why not honor, one can say, you can honor these sexual urges just by having sex. And of course, you can find someone who has similar interests, right? And you're meeting on that ground. But for me, it's like I said, it's not about sex. So yes, I can have this biological need, essentially, to be stimulated in a certain way. Psychologically, I also have a need to be stimulated in a certain way. And that precedes this physiological need that I have. Yeah, I think that, and I've said this before, like, what turns me on, it is that psychological stimulation. I'm a sapiosexual, so I have to be stimulated in a certain kind of way. And it's not, I think sometimes people even misinterpret that. It's like, you have to really get to know a person to know what turns them on. Because it's not just as simple as, oh, let's talk about things that you perceive to be smart. No, it's things that interest. Like, we have mutual interests, and obviously things that interest me, that is stimulating to my mind, right? And it's things that communicate safety. I think just on a basic biological level for women. This is knowing women, though, right? A lot of men don't quite know women, so they miss the mark many a times. But in knowing women, it's important to know that women, we just seek safety, right? That's like the basic human need, really, not just for women, but men too, but especially for women. Safety is like at the top of the list, and security, right? And so a lot of men struggle with this that I come across, especially on dating apps. They totally miss it because they're not thinking in terms of safety, right? They're thinking in terms of their own selfish needs. So they'll approach me like on a dating app and be like, oh, here's my phone number. Hey, sexy, here's my phone number. Hit me up. Let's link up tonight or some shit, right? Or let's link up in the city just spontaneously without even taking the time to really slow down and get to know a person and have a phone conversation, right? The guy who I was chatting with last night, he had told me that he had just come back from a date. And I'm like, okay, interesting. Not that he's a prospect, right? He's definitely out of the question, because I feel like if a person, yes, we're all dating, right? Everybody's on the dating app, like, we're not committed to any one particular person. That's the reason why we're on the dating apps. We're dating. But I feel like for me, I don't know about other women, but I know for me what's important is that if I'm going to delegate and devote my attention to one man, I expect the same in return. It's like, no, you don't get to go out there and just be like openly dating multiple different people, and then here I am giving you my undivided attention. To me, that's not an even exchange. And so this person, like, I've been chatting with, this is just chatting conversation. We actually just came across each other's profile, I think, like the day before yesterday, or early yesterday, shall I say. And for him to say that, and obviously, yes, I'm talking to multiple people too, but I feel like if you're going to pursue a person, right, I don't think it's appropriate, unless, okay, that date was already scheduled, right? But it's just, to me, it's kind of create confusion, right? Like if you're going on a date, or you already had a date scheduled, let's presume that he already had a date scheduled, right? Now granted, the date, it was a fluke, it didn't work out. He expressed that to me, he was just like, because she's not, race isn't salient for her, right? She's kind of racially ignorant when it comes to different socio-political issues, right? And for him, that's important, which I know I brought that up for a reason. But he said that was his experience. And I'm thinking, okay, let's say you already had that date scheduled, right? But meanwhile, you're messaging me. And you go on this date, but it's like I feel like you're not intentional. When your person is intentional, your mind is not going to be scattered and dispersed with so many different interests and multiple women. Like, focus. And I think that's a big issue for a lot of men, that they have trouble focusing on that one woman. So it just complicates things. Like, know what you want, right? And for him, I think for him to see that hindsight, like after you go on a date, that's stupid. This is the reason why I'm single, because I'm very careful about those things that I hold to be very important to me or valuable to me, such as what he even mentioned. Like, that's a common value I think that we have. You know, race salience, or just being racially, politically conscious. That's very important for me and for the person that I'm interested in. Like, you have to have that. If you don't have that, I'm not interested in you, right? And so, like, you knew that before you went on a date with her, right? So why not weed that out, right? Or do you not know how to weed that out? I think sometimes men are disillusioned just by a woman's beauty, that they don't take the time to see what's on the inside. I get that. That's been my experience, where I've gotten so, if only, and I think I've done a video on this, like just showing y'all in a video display of how many messages I receive on dating apps on a daily basis from various men. It's just like overwhelming, and at some point it becomes annoying, and it's just like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Because it's just, hey, beautiful, hi, pretty, and they're so overly consumed, and if anything, distracted by my physical appearance, that they do not get to know who I really am. And then it's like it comes as a surprise, and we're not compatible. It should not be a surprise. These are things, I feel like this is the reason why I only seek people who are also sapiosexuals and who are intellectuals. Like, you have to be smart and get beyond that. Smart people, it's not that you don't appreciate physical beauty. Of course you can, right? You can acknowledge a person's physical beauty, or how they're dressed, right? If they're wearing, these elaborative, cultural clothing, which I like, or my cheekbones or my slanted eyes, and I'm like, But smart, intellectual people, we can get beyond the surface, right? We like to go deep, and that happens through conversation, right? And knowing what things to ask, how to ask those things, to really see who a person is, to get a feel. Okay, is this person really right for me? Right? Do we share common interests or even values? Right? We don't have to agree on everything, but at least have similar values. That to me is important, so that you can weed out the necessary bullshit, right? So that kind of, like I said, when I said that the psychological connection kind of precedes the sexual desire, right? Like, I cannot get aroused sexually by a man that I'm not psychologically and spiritually connected to. So I think when it comes to the challenge of being abstinent, sexually abstinent, is not really that much of a challenge. Because unfortunately, not too many men measure up in that department. They just don't. Okay, and I come across a lot of fine men, phenotypically fine, but spiritually bankrupt, spiritually not there. You know, so it's not really that much of a challenge, because it's like, I know myself. This is coming to a point, and maybe, you know, if you're watching this, maybe you reach this point where you know what gets you sexually aroused. Maybe you're still learning, you know. Sometimes it's through trial and error. But yeah, that doesn't get me aroused. And so I also made I made a post. This was funny. I said, I don't see how people just be fucking all day, every day. It's not that much fucking in the world, right? And there's one person who knows me, relatively knows me. Like, he knows me from back in Florida. He goes, well, we wasn't saying that when we was younger. That wasn't the case when we was younger. And I'm just like, no, even when I was younger, I would say that I was definitely more open to just exploring. That you're going through that sexual exploration phase, and so part of that exploration is, you know, trial and error, right, and making mistakes, you know, and having a bunch of sex. Of course, I was having a bunch of sex, but not to the extent of having it every day, all day. Like, yes, I admit I had sex a lot, right, and I even maybe had sex like throughout the day, right, which may be considered a lot, like a high sex drive, but it wasn't every day. It wasn't like every day. Like, if I'm having sex all day, okay, like if I'm with a person, considering, right, I'm with a person and we feeling each other, and this is like back in even my 20s. It's like, oh, that wasn't the case when we was back in our 20s. You wasn't saying that. Right? But even I think back to my 20s, right, I'm with a person that I care about, I like, feeling each other. And yeah, we probably woke up some wake and bake sex, right? Fucking, right? And then after that, bust a nut, and we come back and fuck again. And after that, come back, fuck it. It could be all day, right? But we're not doing that shit every fucking day. Maybe doing it, maybe, I don't know, 2-3 times a week. But it wasn't every fucking day. So, yes, I meant that literally. In the sense that I don't see how people can have sex all day, every freaking day. All right, that's enough for me. Now, and I agree. I see where he was coming from, because, to his point, you know, like, as we age, I think our sex drive is impacted by age, but it doesn't mean that, okay, it just diminishes completely, right? I definitely can tell times when I have a sexual peak, but I think that that decline in sexual activity as a person ages. Not that your sexual urges decline. I think it's just more factored by your level of discernment, right, and your requirements. Like, for me, like, it takes a lot more for me to be sexually aroused by a man now than it did back then. Right? A man could just be fine back then with a big dick, and that probably was sufficient, right? Because I was just in my sexual exploration phase, right? We just having fun. But now it takes more than just a fine physique, a big dick. It just does. For me to feel at that point where I'm truly sexually aroused by you, and I'm wanting to open my legs and lie down with you. It takes more than that. If you're watching this, feel free to drop your comments below and share what it takes for you. Because everybody, we got different things that get us off, but I know definitely for me, And I made a whole video on this as it relates to my affinity towards alpha dominant men, and what does that really mean? Okay, I'll talk about it a little bit here, but what does that really look like for a man to be alpha, right, and be dominant? Because alpha and dominance are two separate things, two separate constructs, right? Men, I think a lot of men are dominant. A lot of men are socialized to be dominant, but not everybody is an alpha male. And alpha is relating to the social political hierarchy of where a man falls in our society. A lot of men ain't that alpha, not up there, right? You're not respected with a degree of prominence in relation to your male counterparts, right? So you may fall in the beta range. And I think a man can be beta and still be dominant. And dominance is more like an energy. Like you can feel that a man is dominant, right? I think it can be confusing to some people because they're like, okay, if a man is dominant, then wouldn't that make him alpha? Not necessarily. A lot of men don't even have alpha male money. Let's just start there. Like you ain't even got the amount of money to even make decisions to put yourself in the classification of being an alpha male. Alpha men attract me because they are the leaders of their pack. Like these are men who rank very high when it comes to success, right? As we define success in our society, right? So it's not so much about money, but it's really about power for me. And the way our society is set up, monetary success factors into power, essentially, right? So I'm attracted to the power that alpha male possesses, not so much the money, right? With money, I mean, it's hard to separate the two, right? Money equals power. But it's the power for me. It's just him walking with a degree of confidence and almost like untouchableness. Unfortunately, because there is racial oppression and white supremacy, a lot of black men just don't fall in that range of being alpha, in that understanding of what alpha maleness is, right? Because they lack that power. Power in being able to maneuver through this society, through this world, without fear of, being ostracized, being, marginalized, and being targeted, which unfortunately, a lot of black men are. I mean, look what's happened to Kyrie Irving. And speaking of which, I didn't even know who he was, but I'm very glad, and I feel so proud for him and for our culture that he stood up and took a stance against this bullshit, against the bigotry and the racism. He spoke out, and I'm so glad that he did, because I didn't know who he was. I just did not know. Like, I don't watch sports, okay? So why would I know who he is? But he's crossing over from the sports and athletic arena to politics, right? And so he's getting a taste of what it's like to dibble and dabble in politics and to have a platform and to use the power that you have. It's not that black men do not have power. It's just that a lot of them really don't know how to use it, and that power has been suppressed, okay? So they are afraid to use it, just like how they are using manipulation tactics and humiliation tactics to suppress his freedom of speech, right? And there's a lot of power in the tongue, but I think that he's not bowing down. Yes, he did make an apology, but a person can make an apology all day and still stand firm on their actions and what they've done, right? Cheating men, for example, they may make apologies all the time. Doesn't mean that behavior has changed or attitudes have changed. Their attitudes and behavior are still the exact same before they made the apology. After they made the apology, right? So the apology really means nothing unless his attitude had changed. So a lot of people, I think, especially in the black community, felt like, damn, why did he, take his words back or whatever? He shouldn't even make the statement if he was going to apologize. But apology means nothing, right? It's not even worth the fucking paper that you wipe your ass with. If you think about it, it's nothing. It's just words, because we know that he is still standing firm, right? His perspectives and what he knows, like he said, he reads, right? He knows, he's a man who knows who he is. So he can definitely galvanize that power in a good way, and to have influence over many millions of people, and not just, on an entertainment sense, but really on a socio-political, structural sense, like systemic sense. He can really bring systemic changes, lasting changes to America, if he plays his cards right, which I think he's very smart. He seems like a very wise man, that he knows how to play his cards, and he's a very strategic man. So I'm liking the way this is unfolding, but I use him as an example to show, like, yes, black men definitely can be alpha, and I see him as an alpha man, as long as he stand firm on that shit, and he stick to his guns, and his attitudes and his behavior does not change, right? Irrespective of all of these consequences that they have thrown at him, saying that he has to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in order to get reinstated, essentially, and start back playing basketball again. I think that he's gonna take this somewhere, and it's gonna go somewhere. It could be very epic and groundbreaking. I think that's what they fear. This is the reason why they are so, the power structure is so hyper vigilant about their response to what he stated publicly, knowing his level of influence, right? And this is what a lot of conscious leaders, I know I'm taking a little bit of tangent, but I have to, because I feel like my throat chakra is definitely open right now. But this is what a lot of conscious leaders have been saying all along, that if they can get these entertainers on board, right? If they can somehow influence, but it starts with the mind. Right, they have to really know it for themselves. Consciousness is not just like the cool thing to do. Like, okay, I'm just going to jump on board because everyone else is doing it, right? Or it even seems like the right thing to do. This is something that you have to feel deeply convicted in within your spirit, right? So that awakening happens at different points for different people. For me, I feel like I've always been woke. Right? I feel like I was born this way, just growing up, just having a degree of awareness, and with that awareness, like, you question everything, having that degree of curiosity, and wanting to know the truth, and not being easily persuaded. For me, that's what attracts me to a man, right? Him having those same exact qualities and values, and knowing, it's a matter of just knowing who you are and standing firm on that in the face of adversity. Because you're going to have, obviously, if there's a system that has been designed to keep a group of people oppressed, or many different groups of people oppressed, and to allow themselves to advance, right, and to be successful, this system has been in place for many years. Anything that challenges that system, right, or goes against the status quo, is definitely going to ruffle some feathers. So for me, that's what attracts me to a man. A man that's able to stand his ground and to stand up for the truth against falsehood. That's what gets me sexually aroused. So I think it's very easy for me to maintain my abstinence streak, because very few men fall within that. I think it's easier for people to just go along with the status quo than it is for people to go against the grain. Right? I think for people who don't know who they are, that's very unattractive to me. Right? For a man that is not able to have this kind of conversation, discourse with me. A lot of people can get on here, right, and talk about fucking all day, right? And I think that can be very low vibrational. Now, I should say that sex in and of itself is low vibrational, but I think that people's approach to sex is low vibrational. How they handle something so sacred can be very low vibrational. And so I am not surprised to see that when I make videos that talk about this from this perspective, that people, you know, yeah, they listen and yeah, they watch, but I think they have difficulty being able to interact and to contribute to the discussion because they're not there, right? They're not high vibrational, you know, and I don't even think people are aware how low vibrational they are. And it's reinforced, obviously, by, you know, social media and what's popular, right? And what they choose to gravitate to. Because something can be popular doesn't mean that you got to sit up here and run to it and gravitate to it. So I'm curious to hear what your perspective is. For me going forward, I think that I'm definitely going to hold on to this abstinence. I feel like it's something to treasure. And I think about, like, the benefits of it. Of abstinence and the disadvantages of breaking the abstinence, especially with a person. Set aside having that spiritual IQ, right? But just a person ain't even measuring up in the bed. Like if I listen, I feel like if I've been abstinent for 2 years, right? And granted, the longest I've been abstinent is 5 years. I can do this. I'm not, like, sex, yes, for me, it's something that's fun, it's exciting. But I'm not moved by sex, right? And I can go, I'm very, like I said before, I'm very, like, disciplined when it comes to my body and to sexual activity. So it's like, if I am going to have sex, that shit better damn well be fucking good. And not to say for all of the cases, right? But for some, should be whack. Dick don't be packing. So abstinence is very attractive. It's very easy for me. Just reflecting and thinking on those times where I gave a dude an opportunity and he fucking did not measure up. He disappointed. That's why I made a post about before I get to that point of having sexual intercourse, I'm going to have to line them up. Pull your dick out. Let me see what you're working with, right? And not even pull it out, right? Because dudes think that sending a dick pic, no dick pics, okay? Dick pic is a big turnoff. Dick print is more classy, right? But if I'm seriously getting to know you, right, and we vibing with each other, I don't want to see no pics. I'm talking about in vivo, real life, in person. Let me see what you working with. That shit got to be functional because I feel like it's such a disappointment, right? For a man to, like, you feeling a guy and for him to, like, insert, like, that's something so sacred. You're inserting your manhood inside of me, but then it's not satisfying. That's even more sexually frustrating and disappointing. Can you imagine? It's better to not even do it. That's just like going to an event or eating, like, something that, okay, you kind of look forward to, right? And then you go and it's just like, so, like, it's not what you want. It's not fulfilling. It's like it's better to not even have gotten a plate of food or order this food if it's not going to be satisfying. It's better to just go without eating, right? Than to get a plate of food and it's not to your liking. It's the same thing with sex. It's better to not even freaking have it if it's not gonna be to my liking, right? So that's another thing that's keeping me abstinent, because without going into too much detail, so thinking back to the last time I had sex, which was for 2022, which was 2021 January. Whack. That was with that fake ass Black Panther dude. And granted, I was attracted. Like, our minds, we were somewhat connected, right? Spiritually and psychologically. But he was shorter than me, and the dick was just not packing. It just wasn't there. I'm just like, and I think sometimes dudes get it, like, misunderstood because they be like, oh, well, you want a big dick nigga. You listen, you don't want to have no anaconda dick. It ain't even got to be that. It's just the energy, what you come with. and the stamina, and a lot of men come quick. That's some disappointing shit. I'm just like, either you got a weak ass dick or I got some good ass pussy. And I like to believe that, of course, my shit banging. I know my shit, because especially for me to go periods without having sex, and I do this like on a regular basis, yo. Like this most recent 2-year stint, it'll be 2 years, January 2023. But that's nothing new for me. I've done this. I do this very periodically, like throughout my adulthood, right? So I know I got some good shit, right? I ain't even trying to brag. I know my shit. Like, that's just, I know this for myself. And from the feedback I've gotten, like, you can tell. When a woman can tell, yo, when your shit good, niggas lose their fucking mind. They come quick as hell. You're just like, what? Like, so, like, I cannot even exaggerate this shit, yo. And this is my boy right here. This is like the one of two people that have been in my place. I haven't invited nobody in my shit since I moved here 2020, October. Only two people altogether have been in this place where I live, right? One of those two people is a very good friend of mine. He's an African guy. And I kid you not, he's from Gambia. I kid you freaking not. Soon as this motherfucker slid his dick in, this motherfucker nutty, yo. I can't, yo. I was like, why? Like, I feel like you're wasting my time. Shit like that will make a person be abstinent, yo. Because I just can't. You have to come correct. And you have to, I guess that would call for a man to just have experience, right? And you just have to, like, have that stamina. Which, I guess if you're not sexually active, then once you get some, that's going to have an impact too, I guess, to a certain extent. But nah, he claimed that he had been fucking, because he had a whole bunch of condoms in his drawer. But even still, if you've been fucking, then you probably wouldn't have that many condoms. I don't know. But either way, like, shit like that can be very sexually frustrating. And sexual frustration does not feel good. It's just like, especially like, you know, when you got two fucking very well capable individuals, right, in the mix, that can make this thing happen. And it doesn't happen. It's just like, I can't. And yes, a guy can build up stamina, right? If a woman has enough patience, maybe, you know. It's like the more you have sex with this person, the more they're able to delay ejaculation. But, no. And then the pencil dick shit, dick little as hell, like, I cannot. So, yeah, I think, like, for me, looking forward, I can definitely continue. I can afford to continue my abstinence commitment, you know. Like, it's nothing. I just feel like, you know, do 2 years in January, go to another year, be 3 years, 4 years, shit, 5 years. And I've come across people, stories of people women who haven't had sex like in 5 years and like 7 years. I'm just like, damn, right? Can you imagine when you finally do, it's just like, you a virgin all over again, yo. Shit tighter than a motherfucker. And when I say intercourse, me going without intercourse for 2 years, I also mean like penetration too. Because yes, I do masturbate, but I got the hiccups. I'm very intentional about how I stimulate myself when I masturbate. So I only stimulate my clitoris. I do not insert anything into my vagina. I never did, never have. I don't like it. Nah, I just don't believe in it. I believe that the only thing that should be inserted in my vagina, should I say, I can't speak for other women's vagina, but into my flower is real meat. Real meat. Not no freaking dildo or vibrator or anything like that. Like, don't want that. So I'm very intentional about that when I do masturbate. So yeah, and I want my shit to be tight. I feel like it's a gift not only to myself when I finally have sex and break this abstinence, but it's a gift to my partner, right? And I feel like that helps to solidify that connection that we have. It strengthens it. right? When we have good freaking sex and it's like he's penetrating through the tightness and the warmth and okay, I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna stop there, right? But I think it definitely sends a certain kind of signal, I think, through his body to his brain when a man enters into a woman whose vaginal walls are very tight and very strong and grasping, like gripping, you know what I'm saying, his penis very nicely. Um, so I think for me that's just important. It's always been important. So yeah, like okay, so even before this 2 year, like I've gone 5 years. And I was with a person. Can you imagine? A lot of people cannot even fathom that. But I was actually with um, my ex best friend, and we had been friends for like many years, many years. But during that many year friendship, 5 years we dated, and during the course of that 5 years, I think we only had sex once. I can't even think it was twice. I wanted to like give him a second, a twice added on there, but it's just like I don't even think it was 2 times. I think it was just one time, yo. And I remember that one time. I remember because we was living together, and people can't fathom it. Like how it's like it's dealing with a person. For him, he was kind of more asexual. I think I broke his virginity. Like he was not sexually experienced. And then for me, I like believe it or not, I know this doesn't make sense for a person who talks so openly and freely about sex, right? But for me, like yeah, I could deal with that. It was just, I'm very committed. Like when I'm in a relationship, like I don't cheat, you know. So even though like he wasn't an initiator of sex, like you know, we just didn't have sex. That's how it went. And I actually initiated that one time we did have sex. And outside of that, it was just not that I didn't think about sex or want sex. I'm pretty sure like I masturbated, I stimulated myself, you know, with my vibrator on my clitoris. But outside of that, yeah, no sexual intercourse during that period, and it was just amazing. And I think that like I said, when you do it for so long, is not even that important. And that was also part of my struggle phase. So it was in the context of both of us, like we were struggling together. That's kind of what brought us stronger together because we went through such difficult financial times where sex wasn't even motherfucking ain't thinking about sex when you're trying to find out how you're gonna keep a roof over your head, right? So that was another factor too. But even like after that and before that, because that was like from like 2009 to 2014. Even before that, I wasn't like I had periods of abstinence. Now, yeah, I had periods where like you know I would meet a dude, be vibing, you know, and have fun and shit like that. In my 20s, yeah, 20s, this shit went down, especially like yeah, especially like early 20s before age 22 because I graduated from college at 22 years old. So like definitely during my college days, shit was fucking lit. But even still, I had periods of abstinence, like intermittent abstinence, where it's like I can go without having sex. Now that I'm not thinking about it, but definitely can go without it. So I think going forward, it's definitely going to be that way. And I am a woman that loves to challenge. I like to challenge men, you know, so I will definitely put a man to a challenge to see how long he can go without sex and being with me, right? How long he's willing to wait. But sometimes it depends. It's just like a whole combination of different variables that we don't have control over. So we can go in with the onset of thinking that we're not gonna do this, right? We're gonna like see how long we can go without sex, but then shit, in the heat of the moment, when the vibe is right and our bodies and our spirits are connecting and communicating to each other, that just takes over. Nature takes over, baby. But yes, that is my take on that. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. And yo, my demographic, right? My target audience. Granted, I don't really target my videos in any one particular audience. I think that oftentimes men gravitate to my videos for obvious reasons. But I see that the demographic makeup of my viewers is still pretty much the same. It's overwhelmingly men. I saw like the breakdown of the male to female ratio, and it's just the last I think I saw was like 100% men on YouTube. I'm like, you're kidding me. And at one point it was like 97% men, 3% women. But I'm like, I can't believe that women do not watch my videos. What is that about? Like, what kind of videos do I need to make for women to be interested in watching my videos? What do I need to talk about? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I speak to a very broad audience. I'm not really speaking to guys necessarily, but whatever. On that note, I'm going to wrap this video up and get me some breakfast. I will come back and catch you guys in the next one. I'm so glad that I have scheduled some very fun activities today. I actually may come back and do an update when I get there. That's like in the afternoon. We'll see. I'll catch you guys later. It's going to be crazy going back to work, given that I have been off work this entire past week, as I got to take care of some business. And I will be returning to work on Monday, tomorrow, at the hospital. It's going to be like, I feel like it's going to be starting all over again. But December 2nd, this December 2nd will make 1 full year that I've been there. I'm like, time definitely flies by, yo. It flies. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Drop your comments below.